Vivien pressed her ear to the ground and closed her eyes, smelling sulfur, soil, the iron tang of the volcanic earth. There. Impact, somewhere close. And then, a long breath later, again. Thoom, thoom, like thunder creeping over the plains. She straightened and wiped her cheek. It had, in a broad sense, the shape of a man. 2 arms, though longer and thinner than what might belong to a human being. 2 legs, made thicker to support the great weight of its vast, carcass-like body. At its center protruded, not a man anymore, not quite, but Lukka. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Ether Hub. My name's Simon, bringing you more Magic the Gathering lore. Today we continue the story of March of the Machine, the hugely consequential story that will change everything we know about Magic the Gathering. Before we dive into this story, let's recap the previous chapter, which you can find linked on your screen right now or in the description below. As the Phyrexian invasion begins at the prestigious Magical Academy of Strixhaven, its students and staff are left cowering for their lives. Liliana Vess, a previous teacher there, manages to coordinate with students and discover a powerful spell that could help defend the school. With their efforts, the young mages find that one of them, a Loxodon named Quint, is actually a planeswalker. Now we turn our attention to another world enduring the endless waves of the Phyrexian invasion. Ikoria, a plane of monsters, is about to face a true monster the likes of which they've never seen before. As always guys, if you're enjoying my content, consider supporting me by leaving it a like, becoming a subscriber or member of the channel, and of course, sharing it with friends. Now let's continue with March of the Machine, Chapter 6, Ikoria, Survival of the Fittest, written by Roy Graham. On the plane of Ikoria, the once home of the coppercoat-turned-traitor Lukka, humans struggle for survival against ever-evolving monsters. Though the people here viewed these creatures as monsters, an outsider like Vivien Reid saw them simply as nature embodying strength and survival. Though that gave no comfort to cities that had fallen, coming from someone who so proudly wore the derogatory label of Beast Lover. In the midst of Elesh Norn's multiversal invasion, humans again fought for their own survival, as the monsters of their world had finally found something they couldn't compete with: the all-encompassing unity of New Phyrexia. The great city of Dranith, Lukka's former home, was lost. Smoke and rubble was all that remained of a civilization that had survived every great monster that marched on it. Now its wayward children wandered the lava-riddled black volcanic glass of the wilds, seeking a new shelter, seeking hope, while running from the greatest monster Ikoria had ever seen, Lukka. Now led by Lukka's former fiancée, General Jurina Kudro, the sick and injured formed a column protected by what soldiers remained from the siege. She saw firsthand the devastation Phyrexians wrought. She had seen her former love twisted and bestial. If it wasn't for the intervention of Vivien Reid, another planeswalker, there wouldn't be a caravan to lead at all. At least now there was some semblance of hope. To try and protect these people as they traveled to the neighboring city of Lavabrink, Vivien agreed to hunt down what used to be Lukka, try to slay it, or at least slow it down enough for the survivors to make it through the gates. Vivien had spent some time on Ikoria before. She found the way the humans here treated their monsters to be abhorrent. They were something to kill, to get rid of, rather than try to live with. It was an ideology completely opposite to her own, as her bow, the Arc Bow, carried within it the lasting reminders of the great fauna of her world, before it was lost forever. Why would the people of Ikoria fight so hard to eradicate these amazing creatures? Despite that, this new breed of monster was anything but natural. Those of New Phyrexia, and the monsters now infected with their blight, were but a tool of domination, and Vivien would always stand against that, no matter what shape it took. As Vivien groups up with some of the best monster hunters still alive on Ikoria, they worked quickly to lay a trap for the Lukka beast. She gains no pleasure in working alongside such rough characters, but she couldn't argue with their effectiveness or strategy. They had lined a canyon opening with shallow mines. Once triggered by something big, they would explode the thin crust below and expose a bed of molten rock, hopefully dropping, trapping, and burning the Lukka monster in place. Then, if it managed to survive that, the hunters would volley poison-dipped arrows and lances with control wires into its body. It was certainly overkill for most monsters of Ikoria, but they wouldn't spare anything when facing Lukka. Through the canyon opening, they watched as smaller monsters ran frightened from a larger predator. Survival at its finest. The thundering of something big approached, warning all of what would come if they refused to flee. Vivien and the hunters sat quietly. They watched as a giant vantasaur, easily 30 tons in weight, was caught mid-stride and pulled back, screaming and roaring like a deer tracked by wolves, until silence. Then Lukka appeared, or at least what used to be the man from Ikoria. Its body was centaur-esque in anatomy, with the torso of Lukka, as deformed as it was, sitting like the living heart of the now Phyrexian. It had grown in size since Vivien last saw it in Draneth. The creature he had killed was absorbed into its almost oil-laden flesh. It bubbled and hissed, and then grew. Lukka scoured Ikoria and made various monsters a part of his own form. Pieces of wings, horns, claws, leather, and scales dotted the Phyrexian's carcass-like body. That poor vantasaur just added more muscle and weight. As Lukka stepped through the canyon opening, the hunter's trap was triggered. Explosions rang through the valley. The detonations themselves had done little damage to the strong hide of the Lukka monster, the smoke giving way to reveal that their plan had worked. It wasn't the explosives that was their weapon, but the plane itself. The molten rock pushed through the cracks and Lukka fell through. As his flesh burned away and blackened, barely a hiss could be heard. Molten rock isn't the easiest thing to move around in, so the hunters took their positions and pressed their advantage. Javelins with rope found purchase as hunters tried in vain to tie down boundless strength. Arrows were loosed with poison, but if they had any effect, Vivien couldn't notice. At last, Vivien herself let loose an arrow from her arc bow, pulsing with emerald magic, only for the Lukka monster to conjure a bony plate to block it mid-flight, before it could ever hit its fleshy, human-shaped heart. With that, Vivien let loose a second arrow, this time with a more powerful impact. In flight, the projectile took on a deep glow, as energy seeped around it. It took the shape of a large dreadmaw, ghostly and incorporeal, a memory of her lost plane, but just as powerful and proud a beast as it had been in life. The dreadmaw clashed into the flank of Lukka, ripping and shredding through its rotten flesh with its massive jaws. Lukka finally showed some sign of pain from this attack. Tripping over the lava, he was able to grab the misty mouth of the dreadmaw, halt its attack for a moment. It struggled up against its strength, and with its massive tree-like limbs, slammed down hard, leaving the dreadmaw nothing more than wisps of smoke. Lukka lurched forward, swinging the hunters tied to him away, crushing them on his body or on the canyon walls. They were obliterated with a single strike. The hunters, knowing when their prey becomes the predator, fled in fear. Even the greatest monster hunter of Ikoria, Cheville, felt fear in his heart. Vivien didn't very much care for Cheville, but working with him was a sacrifice one had to make in the name of survival. He boasts the most dangerous trophies, and he had spread tales of his glorious hunts. He had coordinated this entire thing. However, he knew better than most what he could and couldn't kill. This thing was decisively something he could not take down. He leaves Vivien behind to finish the hunt, the greatest hunter of Ikoria, unequivocally defeated. As Vivien pursued her target, making its way to the Draneth survivors, their leader, General Kudro, was responding to screams coming from the rear of their column. No one ever said this travel would be safe from attack. What was slaughtering her people took the shape of a cat monster, feline in body shape, but its skin was coated in metal and protected it just as effectively. Its jaws snarled with black ichor as it tore through the defenseless. Jarina presented her sword, but it did nothing to the monster's metal hide. It retaliated with sharp claws that slashed through her armor, only barely stopping before meeting flesh. It pounced on top of her, snarling down, ready to strike. Then she felt its tremendous weight lifted from her. The Phyrexian was launched from atop her and slammed violently onto the ground, as her fellow soldiers descended and dismantled it, leaving it nothing but spare parts and oil stains. She had been saved by a bonder, a man who spiritually connected with monsters, befriending them. In their society before Phyrexia, they would have been enemies, but war makes for strange bedfellows. His companion, a tigorilla, bigger than most of its species, was truly the one who saved her. But Jarina remembered the foul warnings of Vivien. The oil. Avoid the oil. It infects all that it touches, makes them the enemy. The Tigorilla was now covered in this oil, the spoils of its kill. Strange crystals, some Jarina had never seen before, now dotted the Tigorilla's body. She watched as these crystals absorbed the Phyrexian oil, destroying it in a hiss and puff of black steam. It was truly amazing. The ecology of the Ikorian monsters was so fascinating. They evolved so quickly that they now had a natural defense mechanism to counteract Phyrexian oil. It was a small blessing, another glimpse at what could be hope. This attack was merely a scouting party. Lukka would find them. They needed to change routes. Jarina saw this as an opportunity to try something extreme. She led her people through the volcanic mountains off path. She was using them as bait to drive Lukka into the maw of something even scarier, an apex monster. Lukka, of course, would find them, Vivien Reid following closely after. In his deep, metallic voice, like the chorus of 1,000 buzzsaws, Lukka addressed his former people. Draneth, traitor city, your prodigal son has returned for you. I forgive your crimes against me. I bring a great gift. Within Phyrexia, you will find strength unlike anything you have known. Within me, you will find true unity and purpose. Jarina could only feel pity for her former love. A loud cry came from above, a challenger meeting the appearance of Lukka. Jarina had marched them all to the nest of the region's apex monster, the Drakh. Combining features of dragons, big cats, and eagles, Vivien had never seen such an amazing creature before. The mere presence of Lukka was enough to trigger Vadrakh's aggressive defense of its territory, as it descended on its prey with the weight befitting its title of Apex. The two monsters clashed, Lukka's stolen body fending off the rapid strikes of Vadrakh. Lukka found he was physically stronger than the apex monster, grabbing its wings and body with countless limbs and pulling it down. There was a moment of fear in Vadrakh's yellow eyes. Vivien could sense it. Lukka's body became more like liquid, slowly covering the apex monster in an attempt to drown it and make it nothing more than another part of his form. Vadrakh's mouth, before it closed shut, glowed with crackling energy. A blue light shined bright from its maw. Intense heat poured out, not so much burning, but rather evaporating anything it touched. It shredded huge swaths of Lukka's body. First, the arm that was holding Vadrakh down, then the oil that latched to its feet and arms. The apex monster cut Lukka down until he was nothing more than a man, or at least what used to be the man was all that remained. There, Vadrakh held the completed planeswalker in its jaws, exposed and weak. Vivien granted Lukka a final mercy, letting loose a volley of arrows into her former colleague's body, killing him. Vadrakh tossed his defeated challenger aside and flew off, satisfied that its superiority wouldn't be further challenged. Though Lukka had been defeated, he wasn't the only threat to Ikoria. Another branch of Elesh Norn's invasion tree pierced through the sky as pods of Phyrexian warriors were flung across the plain. The survivors would today make it to safety, but it was just another day before they would again need to fight for survival. And there you guys go, our latest look at March of the Machine story, learning the fate of a completed Lukka as well as the Phyrexians' attack on Ikoria. I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I'm kinda glad Lukka is dead. He's been a problematic character for a very long time, with the writers not seemingly having a clue of what direction they wanted to take him in. He was a villain who was trying to do the right thing, but who so easily kept being persuaded to be evil. It was super frustrating. Even in this story, his final story, Vivien explained how she convinced him to fight New Phyrexia, and he did so only because he wanted to return to Ikoria a hero. But when he did return, it was to be their doom. He just couldn't quite get anything right, and I doubt many will mourn the beast bonder who only used animals as tools to meet his own ends. As Elesh Norn herself said, Lukka was a brute who cared more about his personal vendettas than he did about serving Phyrexia. He bumbled into a trap, well, two traps actually, all because he was blinded by his hatred for the world who had shunned him. Obviously, one of the most important parts of this story is the realization that some of the monsters on Ikoria are continuing to evolve and adapt to the Phyrexian attack. New crystals are forming, ones able to absorb Phyrexian oil and essentially cure it. This could be a new opportunity for our heroes to guard themselves from being corrupted, and maybe, just maybe, reverse the effects of Phyrexia on others. We'll have to see if this is explored further, but either way, with this, Ikoria has a fighting chance to fend off the Phyrexian invasion. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, consider supporting us by leaving it a like, becoming a subscriber or member of the channel, and of course, sharing it with friends. It goes a long way in helping us grow our community. And until next time guys, see ya!